Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. My name is Arya, and if you're not new, then welcome back. Glad to see you here again. So today I'm going to be talking about the best and also the most surprising books that I read in 2020. There is quite a few of them, which is surprising by itself because generally 2020 felt like a mediocre reading year, so I did not expect to have this many books that I enjoyed for some reason. Like when I just laid down all of the books that I read and started picking out the most surprising and also the ones that I loved the most, I didn't expect that they will be this many. And so this might be a longish video, but we'll see. I don't know. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I will start with the least surprising book that I loved, and I will make my way up to the most surprising, and then to the best, and then the best of the best. So let's begin. The least surprising out of the most surprising books is Birthday by Meredith Russo. This is a story in which we follow two best friends. It's basically like a friends to lovers story, but this is like contemporary young adult, so there's not really anything steamy about that. And it's basically like a cute love story between a guy and a trans girl, and it's just absolutely heckin' adorable. I love this book so much, and it is in the most surprising category because I just didn't expect to love this much. Like obviously I expect to love every book that I read because why would I read a book that I don't think I'm gonna love? But I just didn't expect it to love it this much, and I essentially devoured this book. I think I read it in the span of 24 hours, which is very unlike me. I'm a very slow reader and I get distracted a lot, and I just don't read that fast. But this was just amazing, and I also have like this memory attached to this book because I read this while we were deep into the lockdown, and I used to go to this necropolis that was close to my house, which is basically like a park. It's just very pretty, and it was very green, and the weather was so nice because it was during summertime, and I just take a blanket with me, lay down on the grass amongst the graves and under the trees and just read. I read this book while sitting there, so I just get memories that I'm fond of while looking at this. But at the same time, this is just a great book by itself, regardless of the memories I have attached to it. And I'd say also, if you're gonna read this book, then keep in mind some trigger warnings. Ones I can remember is obviously transphobia and maybe internalized transphobia, not too sure. What else? Abuse, like parental abuse. There's a lot of talk about grief in this book as well, so just look up some trigger warnings before you read this because I think there's a lot of triggering things in this book. But aside from that, nothing much to say. This is just an amazing book, and if you like contemporary and you like romance and you want to diversify your reads as well, this is the book for you. Next one I have here is another contemporary book, and considering that there's, how many are there? Two contemporaries on the most surprising list and one on the best list, and the fact that I don't really read that much contemporary, it is amazing that there's three of them that I absolutely fucking love to death. And yeah, one of them is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This one, I listened to it as an audiobook, which I think it was a good idea because this made me cry. Like, okay, I didn't ugly cry, but like maybe a tear or two slid down my face, which is not something that happens to me while I read books. I think the whole audio aspect just intensified the whole experience and made the emotions more real, like the emotions of the character, not mine, but also mine, I guess, and just made the whole experience better altogether. This book essentially follows a teen mom that wants to become a professional chef. It's just very cute and heartwarming and adorable, but there's also like some serious topics as well. Again, not a book I expected to love this much because contemporary is just not one of my main genres. Like, it's not something that I reach out for often, and the fact that I love this one as much as well, and the fact that it made me tear up and cry maybe a little bit, is amazing. And That is why it is on my most surprising books of the year list. I highly, highly recommend that you give this book a shot. It is amazing. Just amazing. I don't know. I don't have the words. I need to learn more positive adjectives, but just please give it a read. It was so good, and I guarantee you, you will not regret this. Next up is a Cassandra Clare book, and is that a surprise? Not really. And the one that I'm talking about is Ghosts of the Shadow Market, written by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, Maureen Johnson, Kelly Link, and Robin Wasserman. So the reason this is in the surprising list and not the best list, because this is one of the like short story collection, and the other two that I read I did like, but I didn't like as much. Like they're more on the okay, but this one I loved. Oh my god, yes, it was so good. And considering how big this book is, I devoured it. I think I read it in 3 days, and 3 days for this brick of a book. Wow. At least for me. And if I read a book that fast means I absolutely loved it and I needed to devour it. I think the reason why I loved this book so much is because we mainly follow brother Zechariah, and if you know, you know, brother Zechariah is just mwah, amazing. One of my favorite characters of the entire Shadowhunter world. He just made the whole thing 10 times better. I got to see a lot of things in here that we didn't really see in other of the Shadowhunter books, and I don't know, it was so good, so good. A great addition to the whole Shadowhunter world, and not mad about the fact that I read this at all. Granted, I will read every single book in the Shadowhunter world and every single book that Cassie Clare comes up with in the future, but still, really good. I did not expect to love it as much because it's like a short story collection thing, and short stories isn't really my thing. Like, short stories and anthologies, not something I gravitate towards. But this didn't feel like a short story collection. They all felt like they flowed in a good way. They felt like a story, like an actual book. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but it was just a darn good book. My voice is getting croaky and I'm not sure why. Maybe I should go hydrate. Okay, back and all hydrated. Now, on to the next book. I got Shadow and Flame by Mindy Arnett. This is the conclusion to the Onyx and Ivory duology. I'm not even sure if that's the name of the series, but the first book is Onyx and Ivory. The entire duology is a surprising book for me, not just this one, but I read the first one in 2019, I think. And so cannot include it in here, but I read the sequel in 2020, and so here it is. This book is surprising because, again, didn't expect to love this series so much and this book so much. I just thought it was going to be your average young adult fantasy story, but for some reason, I loved it a lot. I enjoyed it so much, and you don't really hear anything about these books anywhere. Like, there's no hype, there's nothing. So, in my personal opinion, they are criminally underrated, and more people need to read them. What is this about? My memory has begun to fuzz over the story because it's been a while, but I can tell you that there's some creatures and it's like a fantasy world, and then there's royals and courts and a prince, and there's also elemental magic, which many people are a fan of, and I don't want to say more than that, but it's all connected, and it didn't feel too young adult, it didn't feel predictable, it didn't feel basic, which is how I feel about most young adult fantasy nowadays. But this one was just a really good one, and I really would like more people to read this story. The second most surprising book of the year is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is like an Iliad retelling, but it's not told from the perspective of Achilles or any of the other Greek characters. It is told from the perspective of Briseis, and she is taken as a slave by the Greeks as a war prize, and She was specifically the prize for Achilles, and you essentially follow her perspective, and it does have like a feminism sort of aspect to it, and you just essentially get to see how awful these women's lives were as the Greek slaves. And it's an interesting perspective, I'm not gonna lie. Like, you don't really see that. Like, the Trojan War is usually told from Achilles' point of view, but this isn't. And I also listen to this as an audiobook while following the words sometimes. I loved it just way more than I thought it would. Going into this book, I just thought it was going to be okay. I thought it was going to be a good book, but it was a great book in my opinion. I don't know, it really touched me for some reason, and that's why it was surprising. I didn't expect it to just like hit me as hard as it did, and I didn't expect it to have an effect on me, but it did, and that is why it's on my most surprising books. And if you want more mythology, Greek stuff, or like historical fiction, then I would definitely recommend this one. Plus, it has a really beautiful cover. Like, underrated cover. Look at this. This is beautiful. And the most surprising book of 2020, and probably the most surprising book that I've read in my entire life, is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Considering how much I hated Dracula, when I went into this, I thought that it was going to be disappointing as well, because most of the times I'm either okay or just meh with classics, but oh my god, was it so good. I listened to this on audio as well, as I usually tend to with classics, because my brain does not have the capacity to understand the words that my eyes are seeing. I couldn't even tell you exactly why I like this book. I don't know why I like this book, but it is surprising the fact that I liked this much. And I guess some things from the story, like the atmosphere, I really loved the atmosphere. I really loved the writing as well. And just the whole story of Frankenstein's monster, like this analysis of this creature's emotions and thoughts. It was just so interesting and unlike anything I've seen before. Like, I totally get why this one is a classic. I'd say it's truly one of its kind, and the fact that the author came up with this back then, I don't know, it just seems amazing. And also that it still stands to this day as a classic and just an amazing book overall. Oh my god, how many times have I said amazing in this video? I need to stop. I need to find another word. If you've ever thought about reading this, but you were hesitant, please do not be. Read it, because it's really good. And I do recommend the audiobook. It's not that bad as far as audiobooks go. So that was it for my most surprising books of 2020, and now I'm gonna go into the best of the best, the creme de la creme. I'm gonna go in order from the least best to the top of the top, and starting from the least best, I've got Invisible Women: Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Criado Perez. This is a nonfiction talking about exactly what it says in the title. It's a lot of data that essentially proves how the world and everything in the world is designed for men. And it talks about many things. It talks about medicine and cars and the economy and just this book. It is so educational and so eye-opening, and I do firmly believe that every single person on the planet has to read this book. Like, it's a must. It is a must, and there's nothing else to say. It's just an amazing book. You can probably tell from all the tabs that there's a lot of great things in here. It's just a fantastic nonfiction that should be on everyone's shelves, regardless of gender, race, age. Well, maybe not too young. You'd have to understand what's written in here. Next up, I have a book that every single person on the planet loves, including me, and that book is The Invisible Life of Addy LaRue by V. Schwab. And I totally understand why everyone loves this book. So, because it is so well known and so talked about, I'm not even gonna go into what this is. And honestly, I would even suggest that you don't look up what this is about. Just just go into it, just read the book. But do keep in mind that it is a bit slow. Aside from the slowness of it, it is absolute perfection. It is essentially flawless. I do not see a single flaw with this book. And this is one that I do see myself rereading, as I said in my wrap up. It's just amazing. It is pure perfection. The characters feel so real, and the romance and the whole description and the whole aspect of the story and the plot and the writing, everything. Absolutely everything about this book is phenomenal. Can't think of any other words right now because this is just not my day. My brain is not working with me today, but it's such a good book, and there is a reason why there's so much hype surrounding it and why everyone loves it, and it's 100% justified. Next up on my best of the best is a graphic novel series. I'm including the whole series because it's just all one story in my head, so I don't want to like pick an individual volume from the series, and so the whole thing it is. And the series that I'm talking about is Saga, and I'm gonna just hold the first one up, but there's like old volumes here, 1 to 9, but they're kind of heavy, and I'm a weak person. Here is volume 1. This is by Brian K. Vaughan, I'm gonna assume, not sure how you say that name, and Fiona Staples, and oh my goodness gracious, absolutely fantastic. This is like a sci-fi story inspired by Star Wars, in my opinion, and in here you follow like two people from two separate species that are at war, but against all odds, the two of them fall in love with each other and try and escape both of the governments chasing after them. And if you love graphic novels and if you love sci-fi and just a good adventure with so many different characters, and this is just everything you could ever want in a story, and it is so good, and I cannot wait for the continuation because I need to know more. I need to know more. They cannot leave it off where it ended. Like that should be illegal. If you want your heart to break but also bloom and flourish and feel all kinds of emotions, and your eyes to just sparkle from the beautiful artwork, please read this. It is one of a kind, and it does deserve the hype, and is just worth everything. And frankly, I cannot wait to see what's gonna happen to my babies. My god, how much longer will the torture last of not knowing? Please join me in my misery. Next up, I have that contemporary that I mentioned a bit earlier, and it is Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. The best way I can describe it is like sort of coming of age, but not in the way that you would expect. It's like not coming of age for teenagers as what that usually implies, but it's coming of age for like 30-year-olds. We follow our main character. Her name is... I don't remember. I never remember. I'm very bad with names. Her name is Nina. So we follow our main character, Nina, and she struggles with her love life because she gets ghosted a lot. And she also struggles with her life in general because everyone seems to be getting married or having kids, and she hasn't done any of that, and frankly doesn't really want to do any of that. But she's having sort of a FOMO thing going on, and it sounds like your average contemporary, but I loved it so much and I devoured it. This is one of those that I absolutely devoured as well, and I read it so fast, and I absolutely did not expect to love this so much. This is probably one of my favorite contemporaries that I've ever read, and that is saying something in my opinion. I don't know, just the character I related to so much. I think the whole relatability, even though I'm 22 and not 32 as our main character, I still related a lot, and I think that aspect made me love this book so much. Like the whole relatability is what made me love this so much, and obviously didn't expect that. I wouldn't have expected to relate to a 32-year-old fictional character, but here I am. If you love contemporary, give this one a shot because it is 100% worth the read and it will not disappoint. And now we are down to the top 3, and the third best book of the year is kind of cheating because I started it in 2019, but because this is an absolutely ginormous book, I didn't finish it, and so I read the other half in 2020, and it's the first book that I finished in 2020. And the book that I'm talking about is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. I still finished it in 2020, so I'm counting it as a 2020 read. I'm not gonna say what this is about because spoilers, I'm gonna spoil a great many things, but just trust me when I tell you that this book is unlike anything else. It's probably one of the best books from Cassandra Clare and from the entire Shadowhunter world. Clearly there's a lot happening in here since this is 900 pages. It's full of action and love and so many emotions and so many things happen, so many plot twists. My heart, my poor little heart, oh my god. And the way it ended, I need to know. I need to know more, but I won't until probably 2022, 2023, who knows. Yeah, just an overall fantastic book. If you're a fan of the Shadowhunter world and you haven't read this yet, then you are committing a felony. I don't even care. This book is amazing. Chef's kiss. And the top 2 favorite books of mine are, I'd like to say both of them are top 1 because I'm not sure which one I love more, and I couldn't choose because I love them for completely different reasons. They're so different from each other, but I just cannot pick one. I think I will probably say that Hold Back the Tide by Melinda Salisbury is maybe just a little less as good as the first one, but it's just by a smidge. I will keep it as vague as the synopsis itself is because it is best going into this not knowing too much. And I'll just say that this is horror and it takes place in the Highlands of Scotland, and it's historical fiction, so it takes place in the olden days. And aside from that, I'm not gonna say anything else, but the reason I loved this one so much is the writing. Melinda Salisbury is one of my favorite authors ever. Criminally underrated as well, and I think more people need to read this and just her other books in general. The writing made this so real. I was there in the story. I completely forgot about everything that was happening around me. I was in between the pages next to the main character, and that almost never happens. I don't even remember another book that made me feel this way, to be quite frank. And there was this one moment from the story when the main character gets so scared, and I was just so focused. I literally felt a chill down my spine. I can tell you with certainty that that has never happened before. Even when I watch horror movies, that hasn't happened. And so for this book, and for any book to be able to bring out such a physical reaction from me, is something else entirely. And so that is why this is at the top of the top. Please read this book and give Melinda Salisbury and her book the love that they absolutely deserve. And the last book, the top of the top, the best of the best of 2020 is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. This book, oh my god, I had such a blast reading this. Shame on me for not continuing, but my mind is currently occupied by Throne of Glass stuff, so I think maybe after that. But in this book, we follow our main character. Her name is LaRue, and she's a witch. And this is sort of set in a Parisian-inspired historical time. LaRue is a witch. She gets herself into a sort of a predicament where she is forced to marry Reed, and Reed is a witch hunter and he completely despises witches. So that puts her in a sort of a pickle, but it creates a lot of interesting things in the book. And I don't want to say any more than that, but it's just so fun and it's so easy to read. And I love the characters, and I also love the whole world that they're in, and the magic system is so interesting. And just I just want to know more, and I'd say this is top of the top, not because it's an exceptional work of literature, but because I just had the most fun while reading this. And I read my books, well, not mine, but the books that I read based on enjoyment mostly. And since I enjoyed this one the most, it has to be the number one book that I read in 2020. If you do love witches and like fun, snarky, and sarcastic characters, and like this sort of enemies to lovers, forbidden romance type of story, this is the book for you. And I think that is all I have for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Do let me know in the comments below what are some of your top books that you read in 2020, because I would love to just chat about some good books. And I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in another one hopefully soon. Or maybe probably later than sooner, because university is crazy right now, so I'm not making any promises yet, but I will do my best to just do more videos and just talk about books, because it's something I love doing, so I'm gonna try and do it. Okay, I think that's it. Goodbye.